first episode of the Aristocrats Soccer podcast with David Harris and our featured guest, Jake Keegan. Well, not guest, but our featured player. Jake is a professional player with Greenfield Triumph and has had a long and successful playing career. And we've been collaborating on Jake's career for a number of years and figured that we would kick it around the idea of doing a podcast and for quite a while, and finally getting around to doing it and getting it out there, and chose the name Aristocrats based on a couple different reasons. You know, there's a movie from about 10, 15 years ago, a documentary on how it's sort of like a really dirty joke that comedians often will tell to other comedians. It was just, the joke itself I thought was okay, but I thought the concept of the movie was a little bit better. And from that, we thought it was a cool name, and also the idea that there is a connection to soccer. When you Google soccer aristocrats, you come up with, elite sort of players, and we want to bring a high level of discussion and insight analysis to soccer. A quality podcast that goes in depth with featured guests, get a lot of insight from Jake and from myself, to a lesser degree, after I do this long introduction. And then,
You're doing great.
We'll go from there. So, take it away, Jake. What would you like to add to the intro?
Well, I'll just kind of give a background to how Dave and I had first gotten connected. I was, back in my college days, I played with the PDL Westchester Flames, and Dave wasn't involved with the club at the time when I was playing, but the year after, he was working in the social media, or what was it, journalist part of it, the club, the media, the communications part of the club, and he reached out to me to do an article, and that was, 7 years ago now, and we've kind of kept in touch ever since. We did the article, and then he reached out to me on Facebook Messenger, which is our means of communication for whatever reason, about an opportunity.
Old habits die hard.
Exactly. We don't like iMessage. We both have iPhones, and we don't use it. I don't know why. But we both, we share the passion for soccer, and Dave reached out to me about an opportunity in Germany. I was kind of, that year in 2013, I was just trying to find a club. I was struggling. I was going through a lot of trials, but I wasn't able to sign a contract, and Dave put me in touch with an agent and a few clubs in Germany, and I was able to kind of sign on with a team there, and it ignited my career going forward. And pretty much everywhere that I've gone since that first German club, Dave has had some sort of a handle or some sort of a hand in, whether it be directly communicating with the coach and the GM, whether it be putting me in touch with an agent, or even putting ideas in my head. I think a lot of times when we have conversations, Dave will say something, and my first reaction will be like, "This guy, come on, Dave." And then I'll think it, and then I'll think it through, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, that's a great idea. I should be doing that." And I think that happens a lot. I think it actually happens a lot with my parents too. Like, my first reaction with people is like, "No, that's wrong." And so it's always good, I think, to have a voice. Well, obviously someone you can trust, but a voice that you can kind of play ideas off of, and will tell you if they think you're wrong, or if they tell you if they think you're right. But you don't need people who are just going to blow smoke up your ass all the time. And Dave is definitely that person for me. He's not officially my agent. He won't take a fee, but he's well deserving, and he gets his jerseys. That's his form of payment. But yeah, that's kind of how we've gotten connected, and we both obviously share a passion for the game, and I've listened to a few podcasts recently that I found really interesting, and we kind of thought we would try to put our own one together. So yeah, there's that intro. That's how we know each other.
Everybody, I think we all, it's something we can all kind of connect, to our lives. We all have people that kind of, we confide in, we talk with, and, I think it's just bouncing ideas off of, and it's hard for, I think, a lot of players. I think that's what I've learned with you, Jake. Like, it's hard for a lot of players that to get good advice, to get some insight, and just have somebody like a sounding board or somebody you can talk to that's objective and doesn't have a vested interest and is really looking out for your best interests, and just maybe even not necessarily having the knowledge per se, maybe sometimes, but more so like helping you kind of figure out that next step and the next move. And I think a lot of times you see that at all different levels in the game, that guys or women, I guess too, I should be fair in that regard, but players, I'm more familiar with the men's game myself, but players just get bad advice and make bad decisions, and I'm even just thinking off the top of my head, we can even go back to like Nicholas Anelka with his brothers as his agents, and like having all kinds of success, back in the day with Arsenal, and then just up and moving to I think it was to Real Madrid, off the top of my head, if that was correct.
Yeah,
but
he went PSG to Arsenal. I think he went to Madrid after that. I recently watched that documentary.
Yeah.
It was a really good documentary. The Anelka one.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch that actually. I thought he went to Madrid right after Arsenal.
I think he did, and I mean he had so many clubs. It's tough to keep track. He had a lot of success at Chelsea later on in his career. Well, a lot of success,
but that was the move that kind of I think it was his brothers. It was from what I remember, it was it was going back again quite a few years, but like the move from Arsenal to Madrid was very much a money grab, and
and he was only
it was really financial, and he was having success at Arsenal, and if he had just continued on that path for a little bit longer, like it might have been more of a right time for him to move to Madrid or fill in really large, really ultra large mega club, even bigger than Arsenal. But I think if he had just stayed at Arsenal a bit longer, it would have probably helped his career a little bit more, was the thinking at the time. But his brother is influencing him. So that I'm just trying to use that as an example, like of players getting bad advice.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think at his point in his career, he was 20, 21 maybe at the time, and I mean it's tough to turn down Real Madrid and a big money move. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes more importantly is development, getting in the right environment, playing time, all these different factors that I'm more of a small time professional player, but as a big time professional player, like there are so many things. I mean, whether it's cars, whether it's women, whether it's other people in your life, your family, whether it's just big clubs or it's fans, like there's so many other distractions and things that can pull you in one way or another, and it's important to have the right people in your life to help you make those right decisions and keep you grounded. But I mean, just from my personal experience, even like I've made decisions mostly before you came into my life, Dave. So thanks for that. But I've made decisions based on information that people told me, and it was maybe partially true, or maybe it was kind of a figment of the truth, if you will. But it wasn't. It was more based on their self-interest, and it wasn't necessarily based on what was right for me at the time. So it's tough because, I mean, the game is a business, so you have to understand that side of it. Whether you're a coach, you're a player, you're an agent, whatever you are in the game, you're in it. A lot of people because they enjoy it, because they love it, because they love playing, coaching, whatever. But a lot of it is just the financial aspect of it. So you have to respect that, and you have to know that everybody has their interest, their best interests at heart for themselves. So you have to kind of maneuver those waters, and some people, maybe you don't need someone. Maybe you don't need a Dave Harris in your life, and you can make those right decisions on your own. But it's
everybody needs a Dave Harris in their life. Come on.
Maybe not. But I do think it's very important to kind of take a step back and before you make big life decisions, whether it's in football or whatever, in marriage or a big job, to kind of take a step back and listen to the people around you that you trust. But yeah, moving on a bit, do you want to do kind of a little intro to how you... So Dave, let me give a little background first. Dave is the king of the New York soccer scene, at least in my eyes. He will show up on a weekend, Sunday morning, to a Cosmopolitan League game, and just watch the two teams, watch the players. So if he sees someone he likes, I'm sure he'll reach out to him and say, "Hey, I think I can get you to Ireland or Germany or whatever the case may be." And I know your sister lives in Malahide. Is it Malahide? Yeah, just outside of Dublin, which is kind of how I got connected into Ireland. And you have press passes with you had press passes with St. Pat's, and you got to know the manager, Liam Buckley, there. But can you just explain to us a little bit of background about yourself and how this passion grew? I mean, did you play from a young age, or when did you really start watching the game, and when did you start becoming so interested in kind of, I guess I would call it the lower division, the lower tiered, either amateur or lower tiered professional game?
Well, just really quick, basically I just grew up, my dad's from England and was passionate about the game, not overly so to the, extent that, like it wouldn't be going to all the games all the times and, going crazy in the stand or anything like that, but he was passionate about the game and we'd be watching it. When I was very, very little, there wasn't much available, obviously, on TV, not nearly like it is now, and we'd be watching, like, highlights of the Bundesliga, which was the only thing that was on TV, and, he had me playing, but, youth soccer, but, I was never, the athletic or, really good athlete, really, really talented player or anything like that, but I just... I was passionate about sports and particularly soccer, and I think soccer was just always for me growing up was a hard thing for me to share with other friends. Like I just didn't have friends that were really into it. I still don't actually to the level that I am.
Is that why you talk to me? Is that why you always talk to me about it?
I know. I have a lot of friends that love soccer now, but passion level a little out there. But yeah, I just always was passionate about it, always hunting it down, always looking for ways to follow the game, learning more about it when I'd go on trips to Europe, to England and Ireland, as a youngster, teenager, seeing family, watching games, learning about the game, going into the New York City to the international newsstand to get like the English soccer magazines and, absolutely devouring them, reading about the game and just, really, becoming immersed in it as time grew on, and then access grew as I got older and there were more games available, more information available, magazines, more ways to follow it, eventually the internet, and then more recently, I guess, the amateur game was something I became very interested in about 2012. I had started doing some, media, just basic, like a website blog thing, but I was actually interviewing pro players, here in MLS and here in America, just because I didn't think that there was a lot of coverage of the game here, and and it gradually, I think it grew a little bit, but now I think it's kind of come back again where there's not as much coverage, and I think it's actually a perfect time for us to be doing this podcast, to give sort of an independent and hopefully a little more sophisticated analysis of the game from, a very experienced player now, and then from a person like myself who's been following it so closely for so long. But the amateur game I got interested in about 2012 because I had gone from covering like some of the pro game to doing more of a local focus with a magazine website called Soccer Long Island Magazine. A friend of mine, Kevin McCrudden, he is America's chief motivational officer, and as he titles himself, and he had started the magazine. It's more of a project, I believe, for a passion project, but also to try to get his son going, with the business. And anyway, so I started covering a lot of local soccer in Long Island, in New York, where I'm from, where I live, and discovering the amateur game. I was just fascinated by the idea of players that had been playing, MLS, USL, professionals that had fallen off a little bit, and maybe they got released, and it's not like the culture or the environment isn't like it is in Europe, where you just go to the club in the next town, or another part of the country not too far away, and get another contract, but they get released and then completely fall off the radar. They come home, there wasn't a lot of money, they might be playing locally, maybe getting a little money, under the table, on the side, whatever, but just completely different environment. And then learning about, at the time, there weren't a lot of opportunities professionally for our players like yourself, where, you get drafted in MLS draft, maybe go for, quick trial to an MLS club, maybe they'd sign you to contract, maybe, often not. At that time, 2012, 2013, now even less. And, a lot of guys from the college game where it still was producing a lot of players, but a lot of guys just kind of falling, a lot of talented players, I thought, that were just kind of falling through the cracks and not getting opportunities here in America, which is what led me, when I had an opportunity to go to Ireland and cover the game a bit. I think I was over there to cover, cover I was able to go to some, one of the Irish games. Ireland might have been the U.S. or might not have been, I forget now, but I was covering, I got the press pass from the FAI, which surprisingly isn't that hard to do. And, once you're in there, it's the Irish way, you got to meet with this person, that person.
Yeah.
And
have a drink here, have a drink there.
It's a very small world.
Yes.
It's a very small world, and it's just, I met with Liam. I met with a few other people as well. I met with Frank Gavin, who was then sort of the head of the FAI. I think they were probably wondering what the hell I was doing over there covering Irish soccer from New York, from a magazine that they never heard of, that they weren't even sure existed. And so I met with Frank Gavin. I did this tour. Went to Shamrock Rovers and met with the chairman, Jonathan Roach. And then, I was trying to make the case for him or to him about players like yourself and some others that, I just thought, had good ability and maybe, just needed an opportunity to play somewhere, could play at the level and play somewhere, showcase themselves, see how far they can go and develop and go from there. And then when I met with Liam, I found somebody who was a little more receptive to the idea.
Yes, Liam he was my manager when I was at St. Patrick's Athletic, and he definitely thinks outside the box. He's willing. A lot of Irish managers, they don't see outside of Ireland, whereas Liam has signed players. He signed myself, who was American. He signed a few other Americans. He signed this year. He's trying a New Zealand guy. What other?
Ryan DeVries. Right. He signed Will Seymour.
Will Seymour's American, right?
I can't pronounce his last name.
Yeah,
but he's Finnish.
A Finnish guy. Yeah. So a lot of the Irish league, if those that aren't familiar, it's very Irish. It's probably 95% Irish. There's a few English thrown in here. But they don't really look outside that region very often. So, for what you were trying,
part of it is financial, I'd say.
Absolutely, part of it's financial. But for what you were trying to do, it was very important to have someone like Liam and Tommy Dunn, who we'll probably introduce in one of our podcasts later on. He was my manager in Galway. To have guys like that who were just so receptive and so willing to give a chance that other managers honestly just wouldn't even look at. So I think that relationship that you built was huge in terms of you, well, first for me, and then also for you trying to get myself and other players into clubs over in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, Liam plays a huge part in the story because, he I would just stay in touch with him and constantly kind of, beat down his door about the idea of looking at players, and then, another key component, I think, to the story as well is the fact that, you're goal scoring forward. So, which I think, is one of the easier sells, with soccer. It's like, to have a player who's performing and scoring goals, managers are a little more willing to take a chance and see if they can kind of catch lightning in a bottle and see if they can bring that player in, and maybe they'll give them something that they don't have, which is, basically from the perspective of Liam or Tommy or somebody over, in Ireland, is that, the budget's limited, I only have so much money to work with, and if I'm going to spend money to bring in a player, pay for the work permit, to get them opportunity to play here, and, they have to be bringing something that we don't already have or can't already get here in Ireland, so to make that case, and, we're dealing with, this isn't, for those who aren't already, familiar with it, this isn't, high level soccer where it's like, oh, well, the Irish clubs are just flying players in from all over for trials, and,
No, this isn't the English Premier League. This is a bit different. Yeah.
This is League of Ireland, and, it's actually my favorite league. Right now, it's my favorite league, and it has been for a couple of years, actually, because I just absolutely love when I do go over there, getting a chance to go to a game, and going to see you play, was so much fun, and especially when you actually were playing, and, they didn't, put you on the bench, and, I'm screaming and kicking and ready to, go strangle Liam,
That never happened.
But,
me on the bench, that never happened.
Never. But yeah, the League of Ireland, I love it because it's just so accessible. So, once you find the stadium, it's very accessible. It's, Richmond Park is a little, off the beaten track there.
It's behind houses. It's like in a neighborhood. It's crazy, and it's a beautiful little stadium.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It is. But then you walk in and it's like, you feel like, you're at, it's bigger than a local park, but it's awesome, the feel of just sitting in the stand and being so close to the game and watch, you do see some really good players, I mean, you see some bad football too, don't get me wrong, but it's being so close, and the access and the atmosphere, and just, you can go show up and buy a ticket and go in, and, it's not like anything here in America, and it's very European, yet it's not the English Premier League where, trying to get tickets for games, sometimes not so bad, but, if you're trying to get a Liverpool or United game or something like that, it's like good luck, you really have to, figure that one out. And, I just love the atmosphere. It's just relaxed, laid back, maybe it's something to do with being 46 now and not 36 or 26, but, it's just, I think it's a great league all around. I mean, I'm really excited that they're doing this newer thing, where they're streaming online, but it's not really an app, for your TV or anything, but, hopefully they'll get there. So
yeah, that's one thing. I played there for 3 years in the League of Ireland, and I loved every minute of it for so many different reasons. But just the in-game, in the stadium, I guess, atmosphere was one of the. It's something that you just do not get in the U.S. Maybe the only thing comparable maybe would be an Atlanta United, Seattle Sounders, but that's on such a bigger scale. So it's very tough. Just in Greenville, we have a good supporters group. I mean, we had. Last season we sold out a couple games, but it's just it's more of a family atmosphere. It's more of you bring your kids to the game, which is great, and I think I'm not poo-pooing that at all. But in Ireland, you have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people that are all there. They're all there to either yell at you and tell you you're absolute shit, or they want to praise you like you're a god, and there's no in between. I think that's kind of that's what made the Irish game so much fun, because you felt the pressure without it being 70,000 Man United fans booing you off the pitch. It was a couple thousand. It was on a much smaller scale, but I kind of felt that of like truly being a professional footballer. But yeah, good times in Ireland. So
that was the whole goal too. Was like, you know, I was even thinking about it, you know, as we were kind of preparing for this, you know, first episode, and you know, that was the whole idea, was that, you know, I mean, I obviously I didn't know, you can't predict performance. I think that's a key point to take home for like a lot of this, or for a lot of soccer, is that, you know, players move from one club to another. You expect that you're going to get, what a player did at another club, or, you know, and you can't predict performance. You know, you can anticipate, you know, that a player will perform at a certain level and expect it, but and hope for it, but there's no guarantee of that. And you know, there's no guarantee, you know, that there's never any guarantee that, you know, you were going to go to Ireland or Germany, and, you know, I expect you to do really well in Germany, but to be honest, but the level, you know, like, you know, start off at, you know, considering where you came from, but, you know, I expected that you would do really well in Ireland too, and it just, you know, but there's no guarantee, and the idea is just that it was a platform, it was an opportunity at a time when, you know, the opportunities were few and far between here in America, and it was just the idea that, you know, it was a place where you could play and see how far you could go, you know, how high could you go as a player, you know, would you go over there and completely light it up, and, you know, and you did really well, you know, especially, you know, during the time of Galway, and even with Pats, you know, when you were given a chance to get in the field and score, you know, and given opportunities. But that was the whole idea, you know, it was never like an end destination or anything. It was just more like, well, if Jake does well, you know, in Germany, what's next? If Jake does well in Ireland, what's next? Is he going to come back and play MLS? You know, probably not. Not to say it wouldn't, you know, not to say no, but, you know, because like Ryan Guy had played there a few years before you with Pats, and had come back and play with New England Revolution. So, you know, it wasn't to say, you know, definitely a no, but the thinking was just, you know, how well can you do? If you can do really well, get a chance to showcase yourself, be in a full-time professional environment, established league, and then, you know, just go from there, you know, and see where exactly it'll take you, and the next step, you know, in your journey.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that is a lot of players, they come out of college and they were a big shot in college, maybe an All-American, won a lot of conference titles, whatever, and they just expect, but I'll just go straight to MLS. I'll maybe sit out a year, play a little bit the first year, but then by year 2, year 3, I'll be consistent playing time, and it'll just be easy, and it's not like that at all. Like, it's like that for very, very few players that get drafted. It's like that for even fewer of like the total number of college athletes that are trying to make a career in the game. So I think it's so important that you just, like you said, you have to start somewhere, wherever that is. It can be, some people are lucky enough they get to start in MLS and they end up having a good career, but for the majority of players that are trying to make it, you're going to have to start somewhere like the 6th division in Germany, and then you're going to have to try to be like, all right, I'm in the 6th division, did pretty well, let me go to the 2nd division in Ireland. And you're like, all right, we got promoted, at least in my case. I'm in the 1st division now, and it's like, all right, where do I go next? I'm like, in my case, I was like, all right, let me try to go to the 2nd division in the U.S., to a really good league. Maybe I can then, if I do well enough, I can then break into MLS and try to make a career there for a few years. In that time, I didn't do quite well enough, and I mean, and you get in soccer, the great part about sport in general is it's a meritocracy for the most part. I mean, obviously there's political stuff that goes on, but you generally end up where you're supposed to end up if you continue to work and you continue to put yourself in situations where you can be seen. And that's what I've done. I've put myself in plenty of situations to be seen. Some people don't think I'm good enough, and they're probably right. And a lot of people thought that I could play at a certain level. So I've been able to move around. I went from the second division U.S. back to the first division Ireland, and now I'm in the third division U.S. kind of back here again. But I mean, could I maybe have broken into MLS at some point? Maybe, yes. Do I think I was good enough or am good enough to have an extended, legitimate MLS career? No. So I think that if you put in all the work, but I think I was put in plenty of situations to prove that I was good enough, and I think that's kind of the most important thing to take from it is if you think you're good enough, you have to put yourself in situations to be seen for enough eyes to tell you, yes, you're good enough, or no, you aren't. Otherwise, like, there's so many people that I talk to that are just like, oh, I'm here, can you help me on a trial with, in Germany or in Ireland, and it's like, they want to go there, and when they don't get a great contract right away, they go on home and they get a new job, or they get a real job. So you have to continue to put yourself in those positions to be seen, and that's kind of what I've done. I think there's a word. There's a guy I played with in Edmonton. He used to use it, and he said, "You got to be a grinder." And I think it's very, very true. I think he was 18 years old saying it, so that kind of shows that his level of maturity. But he's a center midfielder, can't really ping a ball, can't really shoot a ball, doesn't score goals, but he just works as hard as he can, puts in tackles. And I was with him for 1 year in Edmonton as an 18-year-old. He was not as talented as most of the guys on that team. He played almost every week. We had a really good series that year. Then he got to move to MLS, and he's been playing with the Impact for 3 or 4 years. So he's a perfect example of a guy who had just put in the work. And
What is his name?
His name is Shamit Shom. Sorry. Shamit, you can get a shout out on our first episode of the podcast. But I think the journey is it's not going to be easy for 95% of the people. And what you see on Instagram from Ronaldo. Maybe, Messi lives a kind of modest life, but like Ronaldo and all the fancy cars and the women and all that different stuff, I think it's not the case. So you really have to love the game, and you have to love the grind, and you have to be a grinder. I mean, people may look at that as almost a derogatory term because it's like, if you're a grinder, you're not talented, you're just not good enough. But maybe it's because that's the way I've had to be successful. But I look at it as that if you are a grinder, I think, for the most part, if you need to have a certain level of ability, but I think for the most part you can be very successful in this game.
Yeah, we could even take it back a step and go back to also some Flames, and because it's something we both have a common connection, even though we weren't there at the same time. Westchester Flames USL League 2, back then USL PPL. One thing I was communications guy / recruiter, because the recruitment end was a little lacking at that time, particularly. Now they have it bubble, so hopefully it has changed. But as a head coach, but back then, there really wasn't any real recruitment, and I noticed that quite quickly, and kind of just dove head on in without really real experience or any real knowledge to go off of. But I had some basic fundamental background of understanding of certain level of soccer players should be able to potentially play at the EPL level. So I think if you're looking at a Division I college starter, pretty good chance that they can at least play at that level, perhaps excel, perhaps not. We don't know, but even when you just did the numbers in terms of the number of PDL teams, number of MPSL teams also, and then the number of available roster spots and the number of college players, and you compared them, it was almost 1-to-1 at one point where, particularly at that time. So, I just set to work to recruiting, and it was so hard sometimes to get players to come out, and players that seem to have a genuine interest in going to the next level, but weren't willing to put the work in, weren't willing to grind, as you said. And as I tried to explain to a lot of them, and it wasn't any kind of recruitment pitch or anything. It's just honest, that, this is a stage. It may not be the greatest stage, it's very far from it, but it's a stage. It's an opportunity to, perform, to show what you can do, and to see then what door that leads to next. And, you drove really far, and took a chance and went with the Flames, and he grabbed it, with both hands and excelled, completely excelled, and that really opened a lot of doors for you. And, I would use you as an example for a lot of players that, now he's in Germany, now he's in Ireland, for the couple of years that I was with the Flames as the communications director / undercover recruitment director. But, just trying to get guys to come out. And, I guess one of the guys that probably really took it with both hands a little bit would be a guy named Evan Nadner, who's been playing with New Amsterdam, and, a really nice guy, good player from Boston University, took advantage of the opportunity that you had kind of established to go to Germany, has done well there and has had a career, playing there, and is back here now, and, at least, Evan hasn't gone, maybe as far as he would like to have gone in the game, but at least he's had the opportunity to find out, what he can do and what he can't do and how far he can go. And, that's what, I've tried to encourage a lot of players to do is just take that opportunity, give it a shot, give themselves that time in their lives when they're in their early 20s to see what they can do, where they can go, how far they can go. Give it, we all, no matter what you're doing, maybe you get lucky and you walk into a job where you're making a lot of money, but oftentimes, we all have to, spend a few years, working our way up, grinding, doing an internship where we're not getting paid a lot or not getting paid at all. And, there'll still be time in your life for, a career and whatever you choose to do if it's on, outside of professional soccer. But, just for guys to take that chance, even, most recently, when you look at, Sean Nealis from Long Island, who's a player that, was having a hard time with the Rough Riders when he was playing PDL. When he went to the Flames, he got a little bit more time, but he wasn't looked at as, a top player. But then he went back in his senior year and, after playing with the Flames, and, he just took advantage of opportunities that were available. Now he's, in MLS playing with the Red Bulls. And, guys just really have to take advantage of those opportunities when they come and give it a shot and see where they can go. Because it's not, it's still not a direct path. It's getting better, I think, here in the United States, but it's not a direct path a lot of times where there are players that are playing for non-MLS clubs at the youth level, and they still have a lot of ability, and they need to find their way. Whereas if they're in that academy of the NYC, FC, or the Red Bulls, they have, or Los Angeles Galaxy, or whoever, it's a little bit more of a direct path.
Yeah. I can just remember my first year in the PDL was 2011. I had just finished my sophomore year at Binghamton in college. And my freshman year, I was really good, all conference, scored a lot of goals. My sophomore year, I wasn't as good. I only scored 3 goals. Played every game, but just didn't have a great year. Wasn't that confident. I was trying to get on a PDL team for the first time, and my coaches reached out to clubs. I reached out to countless clubs. I actually went to a 2-day invite trial with Western Mass Pioneers. They were one of the clubs in the league. I went with 4 Binghamton guys, and at Binghamton I was even at my sophomore year, I was one of the main players. I was considered to be one of the better players, probably the best, and I went with 4 guys. 2 of them got signed, and 2 of us didn't, and I was one of the 2 that didn't get signed, and I was just like, are you kidding me? And I that was probably late March, and I was still struggling to find a club, and I knew I needed to play somewhere. Like you said, I knew I needed that opportunity, like kind of like a Sean Nealis had, just to get games first off, but also to just be put in front of people that could help me maybe progress on after that. And I went. It was the last day of my spring break before I went back to Binghamton, and I just went to Western Flames had an open tryout, completely open, no invite. I didn't get an invite. I think I paid a sign-up fee for the tryout. I went. It was a Sunday morning. I was going to drive back Sunday. I was like, do I really want to go to this tryout? Like, it's an hour the wrong way from Binghamton. And I show up there. The tryouts, I think it was like 11 o'clock start. I show up at 10. I'm thinking, like, people are going to be there warming up. The field wasn't even unlocked. Like, the gates weren't even open. I was like, this is organized. So then I get there, I wait there in the car till like maybe 10:30, 10:45. People start showing up. The gates are open, but there's so many players. There must have been 40, 50 players on the field. So we do a little warm up, and then go straight into 11v11, and they name out the teams of the two sides of 11. I'm not in the 11v11, so I have to sit out on the sideline. And the first game is going on. It felt like hours. It was probably maybe 30 minutes. It felt like hours. And while I'm standing there, I'm watching it, and like some of these players can't even like walk and chew gum at the same time. It was a shocking level. And I'm standing there watching it, and I'm like, you cannot be serious. I'm watching this right now. I kept looking at the car. I'm like, I'm just gonna leave. This is ridiculous. And finally, whatever it was, 45 minutes in, Gus Scoofus, who is the head coach of the Flames at the time, he's like, all right. There was a group of players that hadn't been playing, and we went on the field within 5 minutes. Scored a goal, got an assist. Gus calls me over. It's a true story. Gus calls me over. He's like, all right, here's the paperwork. You need to sign this. He's like, you're in. And I mean, the level that day was not great. I didn't really have, I didn't really do much to prove myself. But I came back, whatever it was, May, when the season started after the college semester, and I ended up, there's 70 teams in the PDL across the country, so many players, so many top college players, so many ex-pros, which is one of the cool things I thought about the PDL, is just like how many ex-pros, like guys who had played with New York Red Bull, guys who had played sometimes over in Europe, guys who had done all these different things, and as college players, I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I got to play with these big names, and at the time I was like, they're not any better than me. I mean, they're good players, but I'm at this level. And then the first season, I ended up winning the Golden Boot for the entire league. I scored a goal a game, 16 and 16, and it was just like, that was at that moment where I was like, I'm playing with these top college players who are like all Americans. I'm playing with these ex-pros who played at high levels. I am good enough to play at that similar level, and that it's when I kind of had the belief that I could have a professional career. But yeah, I mean, honestly, if I had a weaker mentality, I would have, A, not even gone to the open tryout. B, I would have left 30 minutes in when Gus wouldn't put me on the field when I was watching the blind and the deaf play, and but it's just, you have to kind of stick with it and be persistent and just try to be put in front of as many people as you can, play as many games as you can, and eventually things will start to break for you. And I have no idea how my life/career would have turned out if I didn't play for the Flames, but I can't see myself having the same level of success if I didn't have that season. So it's just, sometimes things have to work out in weird ways, but I'm obviously really thankful for that experience.
I love the stories. That one I had heard before. I love the stories of the Flames.
Oh, there's so many Flame stories.
Oh my gosh, we're definitely going to get into a lot of them throughout this podcast. And as much as I love Gus Scoofus, the frustration level is still quite high. Even with the little that I knew, like sometimes, like having seen some of the players that I was able to get through into some of those tryouts, where I was able to convince them to go to invite-only tryouts instead of open. And although we would end up doing an open one anyway, but I was able to get some decent players to come out, and just really quick, like having Matt Turner at your invite-only tryout, when he was the backup at Fairfield who hadn't played a game, and practically begging Gus to take him as the third goalkeeper, and then Gus letting him go, goes to Jersey Express, starts every game. They go to the national finals. Now he's been at national team camp, and it's just like so painful.
That's the part of the game, though. It's a game of opinions, and some people are much more informed, much more educated opinions. But regardless, there's a lot of different coaches out there, and you could have 5 players go to 5 different tryouts, and they can only pick one. 5 different times they'll pick a different player. Like, you just never know. And some guys like a striker that's big and strong, but can't finish. Some guys, what they want, a little nippy little striker who will get in behind, and it goes for every position. I was saying goalkeeper's one where, like, if you're not over 6 foot, most coaches won't even have a look at you as a starter. So it's a game of opinions, and that's why, like I stress, it's so important to be seen by as many faces as possible. And it's like dating in a sense. Like, you're gonna go out to a club and you're gonna ask a girl out, and the first one's probably gonna say no. The second one's probably gonna say no. And, like, you have to be persistent. Not creepy, but you got to be persistent. And you got to be persistent, and eventually someone will say yes. And
and that's where I think a lot of times, unfortunately, I think anything we kind of talked about, with play with the lack of opportunities and with being persistent, and I think a lot of times players get frustrated very easily, and just being persistent and taking advantage of those opportunities, and going and trying to do as many things, and as you can. There are so many more opportunities now than there were, back, 8, 9, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, with there being so many more clubs, a whole other level of USL, professional, clubs, and you have a NISA league, which, may not be the highest level of professional soccer, but it still provides opportunities for guys to play, to see, games, to see, some players, and, you'll see somebody that'll go play at a higher level, play for an MLS team. I'm sure eventually if the league lasts, into next year and beyond, you might see that. You probably will.
Absolutely.
It's just not the same system here in America where players fall through the cracks, and then even still, and whereas in Europe, not that it's any kind of utopia or anything like that, but if you fall off with one club, you can go relatively close by and find another club, and like you said, game of opinions, and maybe somebody else will see something differently. It's subjective.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even, it's very far from baseball where, you can go by statistics and, things like that. So.
Yeah, it's not track and field. You're not running the 100 meters. There's a lot. There's multiple ways.
How would you do with 100 meters?
I'm better at 50. Probably better at 10 too. I think I'm quicker rather than fast, but.
The ball's inside the goal, though. All of a sudden it's a
yeah, just in the 18-yard box. That's my forte.
Basically, I think we'll call it a day for episode 1 and our introduction. And we definitely have some big plans for this podcast as far as getting in other folks, to partake in our discussion for the Aristocrats Soccer podcast. Looking at soccer from a really high level, looking at quality over quantity. We may not do an episode every week, maybe every couple weeks, but we're going to try and give some really good content in a sea of podcast content and choices for things to listen to or watch. We're going to try and find really good guests at a high level that have some interesting insight to to the game, some where you can get a little beyond, what you see on TV or at the, local stadium when we're able to go. And, get in there and really learn a lot more about the game and share our experiences. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Really excited about it. Really looking forward to it. We have an Instagram account. It's at Aristocrats Soccer. And we have a Twitter account, which is at Aristocrat Sock. We're limited to 15 characters, and we can't do soccer. So
I don't think I followed the Twitter one yet. I'll have to give that a follow.
I know it used to be called David Harris 0422, but now it's person, so you are following.
Oh, it's just your personal account. Got it.
Well, I don't need a personal account. We need followers. So,
Okay.
Not that I have that many, but let's start with a built-in audience.
Thanks to everyone who tuned into that first episode. I'm really looking forward to doing this podcast with my advocate, Dave Harris. I've been lucky enough to be involved in the professional game for 8 seasons now, and I've had so many great experiences in different countries and with different clubs. And I'm looking to kind of share those experiences with you. There's so many stories that go untold, especially in the lower division professional soccer game. So I'm looking to share my personal stories and also the stories of a lot of different teammates and people that I met along the way. So be on the lookout for more episodes. Thanks so much for tuning into episode 1. Sorry we don't have a catchy closing yet, but we'll see you next time.